Hi, Wimauma. We are the Wimauma Mamas and Papa. This is Merle, Ariba, and Richard. We are here to talk about the issues that you care about. Traffic, healthcare, education, and the environment, just to name a few. Right here in Wimauma and the South Shore area where we all live. This podcast is a small look at big problems. We are all the same. We all want clean air and safe drinking water and food free of pesticides and good schools for our children. Now, roads that we can travel on would be a bonus too. And when I see a problem, I want to point it out so we all can take some action to make it better for everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm Ariba, and we cannot forget that we live in a representative democracy and we don't always feel represented. So the solution that we have is to make sure that we are represented.
Hi, I'm Richard. I'm a retired resident of Wimauma and an implant from the north, so coming to Florida is an experience and a learning one for me. In the last 4 years, I have just now decided to jump into this podcast, very selfishly because it is helping me more than any of you to understand Florida, its thoughts, and its legislation. So I'm glad you're joining us and joining my podcast because I'm learning more than any of you.
For anyone who's interested, we actually have a Spanish translation of our podcast. The hosts Martha and Inez do a fabulous job. They do all the recordings and they do the translations, and none of this would be possible without them. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Buzzsprout under the name Wimauma Mamas en Español. In hindsight, the name Mamas de Wimauma would have been much better, but none of us are native speakers. It didn't occur to us until later, and it's too late to change it now. We also posted a link on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We welcome your concerns, problems, and issues to be read on air if you like, and if we can help solve any, we will give it a try. You can contact us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Wimauma Mamas, and on email at wimaumamamas@gmail.com.
Last time we took a look at Medicaid and a cutback that will hurt people who need Medicaid. We have an update on the Medicaid cut. The cut eliminated a retroactivity provision that paid for health care services for Floridians before they were enrolled in Medicaid, but were eligible for coverage. Lawmakers will have to vote to make that cut permanent this year, or else the retroactivity provision will be renewed in July, according to federal officials. Mary Mayhew was appointed the new head of Florida's Agency for Healthcare Administration. Mayhew also will be involved in a decision on whether to make permanent a $98 million Medicaid cut that occurred under former Governor Rick Scott. Advocates say she fought the expansion of Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, and slashed food stamps and other safety net programs for some of Maine's sickest and poorest residents. Friendly reminder that Florida has one of the worst health care systems, and that it's because our leadership insists on making decisions like this. Contact Mary Mayhew at mary.mayhew@cms.hhs.gov and tell her that this is unacceptable.
Governor DeSantis can still choose to expand Medicaid and get rid of the cut in Medicaid coverage. Call the number 850-717-9337 and tell DeSantis to expand Medicaid and get rid of the $98 million cut. And as always, you can contact your state senator and representatives and tell them not to put this in the budget. Don't know what to say when you call? Don't worry, we posted a script you can follow on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
We also talked about how you or a loved one can get to the hospital when needed as fast as possible with the help of an Opticon device. And as you know now, it's being put in. So we won that round.
Yes.
Fran presented interesting facts about how Wimauma began. And we had a fantastic interview with Andrew Davis, who explained to us that we do not have to accept our terrible traffic. We can change it.
Here's what we're going to talk about today. Farmers, food stamps, and federal funding. Try saying that 5 times fast.
All I'm saying is that English tongue twisters have nothing on Hindi tongue twisters.
We'll have to take you at your word for that. All right, here's what else we're going to talk about. What is Brexit? Lead in drinking water in our schools.
Now it's time for news here in Florida. Wimauma farmers, this is money for you. In the Washington Post, Jeff Stein wrote, Congress voted to pass an $867 billion farm bill. The bill contains billions of dollars in subsidies to American farmers, and that includes Wimauma farmers too. The congressional bill legalizes hemp, increases funds to farmers markets, and rejects stricter limits on food stamps. Farmers in Wimauma and would-be farmers, take note, this could be you.
Would-be farmers?
Yes, if you have an acre of land, you can raise goats, plant a simple crop, or become pasture land and be considered a farmer and pay less taxes. The average per farm received $13,958 in 2012 in the latest published figures I could find. The Farm Bill for 2019 has an expansion of federal subsidies to more distant relatives of farmers, such as cousins, nephews, and nieces. Also, it provides permanent funding for veterans and minority farmers. Cuts in food stamps are not in the bill. However, the White House has signaled its intention to cut food stamps without the approval of Congress. This can happen as the bill does not tie the hands of the White House. Call your senators and congressmen to stop the cuts in food stamps from happening. U.S. Senator Rick Scott's D.C. phone number, 202-224-3041. United States Senator Marco Rubio's Tampa telephone number, 813-853-1099. And also U.S. Congressman Vern Buchanan's D.C. telephone number, 202-225-5015. We posted a script for you to follow on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Now it's time for the Hillsborough Close Up. We live in Hillsborough County, the place, incidentally, with no hills.
No, but it does have lead.
I'd rather have the hills.
Me too. Unfortunately, there's no way to change that, but there is a way to change this. In 2017, the Hillsborough County School District found lead in its water, and it didn't tell parents for over a year.
It didn't even tell the elected Hillsborough County School Board.
The school district ignored 16 months of federal recommendations that they disclose the results.
And only after a Tampa Bay Times investigation, which, by the way, we will be citing throughout the segment, the school district finally decided to announce the results on July 31st, 2018. That day is significant because President Trump was visiting Tampa and all of the media attention was on that. This may not have been the school district's intention, but it was an effective way to take the attention away from what, on any other day, would be considered a huge news story. Now, before we dig into what happened, you should know that the Hillsborough County School District has completed testing the water, and a district spokesperson says that all of the issues were corrected. If you want to know if your child's school has or had lead in its waters, you can find out on the database they published on the Hillsborough County Public Schools website. Likewise, the Tampa Bay Times also has a database you can check. We posted a link to both databases on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I'll give you a heads up. I discovered that my former middle school and my former high school had lead in its waters, so there is a good chance that your child's school did too. Now, here's why you should be concerned. Lead has a lot of life-changing issues. It hurts brain development, which hurts a child's ability to do well in school. It also limits oxygen in the body, which causes you to be very tired, which will also hurt your school performance.
Now, to be clear, less than 2% of the almost 11,600 fixtures, that's water fountains, tested had more than 15 parts per billion, or ppb, of lead, according to the Tampa Bay Times.
Let's try and make it a little clearer. That was a bunch of numbers.
Don't panic, folks. We're not trying to get you to do math. But what we're about to tell you is even more frightening. The Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, set a standard that water sites should not have more than 15 parts per billion, or ppb, of lead.
That number was pulled out of thin air. It doesn't mean anything. Yet that is the law that is used to decide if the water is safe or not.
Water bottle companies are allowed to have up to 5 parts per billion of lead.
That number doesn't mean anything either. There is no place in the human body for lead. That's according to Yana Labrando. She helped expose the water problems in Flint, and she's right. Practically every scientist will agree with that statement. The Centers for Disease Control, or the CDC, the American Pediatric Association, and even the EPA, which set the 15 parts per billion limit in the first place, say that any amount of lead in drinking water is not safe. The only reason the EPA established that regulation in the first place is because in 1986, some water utilities could not afford to aggressively combat pipe corrosion.
So the schools that were built before 1986 are at especially high risk for lead.
That leaves the question, why do we still use the EPA regulation?
That's assuming we even use it at all. Did you know that there is no law in the state of Florida that requires schools to test for lead? Florida law requires school leaders to protect children's health and safety, but says nothing about lead, according to the Tampa Bay Times.
So another law pulled out of thin air.
Pretty much. Chris Farkas, the deputy superintendent for operations, and Grayson Cam, the district communications chief, said that they deserve credit for testing the water in the first place.
The problem isn't that they tested the water, it's that they took so long to disclose the results.
Yep, and here's the other thing. This isn't just a problem impacting Hillsborough County. Polk County began testing its water after the story about Hillsborough County came out, and they found lead in their water. Sarasota also found lead in some of their schools. This is hurting the whole state, and particularly in Hillsborough County. Many of the high lead results were from water fountains that teachers and students drink out of. They also found some in kitchens where vegetables can soak up lead-tainted water, and that food gets served to students.
And that is horrifying. You said earlier that this is something we can change. What can we do about it?
There is a bill on the Florida Senate table that was introduced by 7 senators, including Senator Janet Cruz, Senate Bill 66, Drinking Water in Public Schools. If it passes, it will do 2 things. 1, it will require Florida schools built before 1986 to track water sources where students consume water, like water fountains, by installing barcodes on them. And 2, it also mandates that schools built before 1986 install an approved filter to reduce lead.
I don't think this goes far enough. There were still schools built after 1986 that had lead. This law is a good place to start, but we should still push our representatives to do more.
100% agree. Call Senator Bill Galvano at 850-487-5021 and tell him to pass Senate Bill 66, and tell him that it should also include schools built after 1986 too. Also, contact your U.S. Representative, Congressman Vern Buchanan, and your U.S. Senators, Marco Rubio and Rick Scott, and tell them that there should be a federal law that requires schools all across the country to test their water. This is unacceptable. But if you want more immediate action done, you can also contact your county commissioner, Stacy White, at 813-272-5740 or 813-272-7049. and tell him that he should take more immediate action on this issue. We posted information about how you can contact your representatives, and we posted a script you can follow on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Let us know what you think by contacting us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at WhyMamaMamas, and on email at whymamamamas@gmail.com.
Let's take a look around the country and world. Today, it's around the world. What is Brexit? Britain voted to leave the European Union. What is the European Union? The European Union is a unified trade and monetary meaning money, body of 28 member countries. It eliminates all border controls between members. That allows the free flow of goods and people, except for random spot checks for crime and drugs. So as the deadline for Britain's withdrawal from the European Union, or Brexit, bears down, the government is paralyzed. Companies are jumping ship, fears of medicine shortages are rising, and after Prime Minister Theresa May's plan for leaving the bloc was resoundingly rejected by lawmakers, Parliament, like our Congress, is only now getting around to debating other ideas mere weeks before the departure deadline. The deadline is March 29, 2019. With companies leaving Britain, they will take thousands of jobs with them to other countries. This will have a devastating impact on the economy. Mrs. May has promised that Brexit will end free movement, the right of people from elsewhere in Europe to move to Britain and vice versa. That's a triumph for some working class people who saw immigration as a threat to their jobs, but dispiriting for young Britons hoping to study or work abroad. A portmanteau of the words Britain and exit, Brexit, is shorthand for Britain's split from the European Union, changing its relationship to the EU members on trade, security, and migration. The exit started with the refugee crisis that made migration a subject of political rage across Europe and among accusations of lies and fraudulent tactics on the leave side. Britons voted for a hazily defined Brexit by 52% to 48%. Sounds like some of our elections here. No one knows what might happen next. Our information is based on an article by Benjamin Muller, updated January 30th, 2019.
It's now time for the Did You Know segment. Fran is a good friend of mine and a neighbor. Fran taught social studies and more at the high school level for 35 years. She was so good at her job that at times she still thinks she's teaching and always will be. Standing in for Fran are Richard and Ariba.
How did Fort Lonesome get its name? Fort Lonesome is located in southeastern Florida. It is located on County Road 39. Information is very scarce. According to Florida Hometown Locator, Fort Lonesome did not appear in the 1895 atlas. It is a populated place, but because it is not a federal census designation or incorporated place having an official federally recognized name, data specifically about Fort Lonesome is not collected under that name.
Federal census designation? What does that mean?
That the people are counted but put into other areas.
There never was a fort there, at least not one called Fort Lonesome. There are several local legends explaining how the name came about, but the best explanation dates back to a serious crisis in the Central Florida citrus industry in the 1920s. In April 1929, state officials announced that Florida was suffering from an infestation of the Mediterranean fruit fly. To combat the problem, the Florida Department of Agriculture cooperated with other state and federal authorities in an extensive program of eradicatives.
That is government talk. My guess is the word means chemicals that get rid of pests.
Inspection stations were placed around the area. One station was located at County Road 39 and State Road 674. The National Guardsman manning the station didn't have traffic to look forward to, as most of the industrial action had quieted down in this section by 1930. To express his feelings about his assignment, one of the inspectors allegedly hung up a sign reading, "Fort Lonesome."
Poor guy.
I know. The spot has never been incorporated, but the Florida Department of Transportation still posts signs on State Road 674 marking its location.
Let us know what you think about Fran's segment by contacting us at Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Wimauma Mamas and on email at wimaumamamas@gmail.com.
Normally at this point, we would introduce an interview segment. However, we did something different. Earlier this month, we released a 2-part interview series with the Sierra Club. We interviewed Kent Bailey, who is the chairman of the Tampa Bay Sierra Club, and Gonzalo Valdez, who is a Florida Beyond Coal organizer for the Sierra Club, about something that will end up costing us more in the future and that required immediate action. Today, as we're recording this on March 11th, we will be attending a hearing about an investment that TECO is making in a fracked gas plant that will increase our electricity bill and end up costing us more in the future. We will tell you how it went in our next podcast. You can check out the interviews on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, and Buzzsprout. We posted a link you can follow on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
That's all for today, Wimauma folks. A special thank you to Kent Bailey and Gonzalo Valdez for joining us in a most interesting interview. Keep a lookout for our next podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. See you next time on Why, Mama, Mamas!
And Papa.